So, what we're going to talk about here is how you find your role in life, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the corporate machine and what's good and what's maybe not so good about it for you, for me, and how it is that you work out eventually what you should be doing in order to be content. I'm not sure if I want to talk about it as being happy, but certainly how you find that function in life. And one of the things is that you've got quite an interest in history from that point of view, John, I think. In that you left school with no A-levels, is that right?
Oh, I didn't have A-levels. I hated studying. Got a few GCSEs, but that was about it. Didn't enjoy studying at all.
But you are, I know from personal experience, a bright guy.
Okay, if you say so. Thanks.
I do say so.
Thanks, okay.
But what was it at school that just you didn't...
I think as much as anything, I went to a really bad school. The school was that bad that 5 years after I left, it was shut down. It had its name changed about 2 years after I left because parents wouldn't want to send their children there because they knew of its poor reputation.
Okay.
And another 3 years after that, it actually got shut down and it was closed. And the teachers were totally... they weren't engaged at all. They weren't interested. My A-level lessons in design technology, which I was good at, like doing stuff practically, making things with my hands. When we used to go for the theory lessons and stuff like that, you'd go, do you want to go and do your own thing? And we'd be like, yeah, cool.
So the teacher just let you do your own thing?
Yeah, the teacher was totally not interested.
And that was your A-level, right?
That was the A-level, but there was probably maybe one teacher that had some interest in the students and some kind of interest in their education, but for the most part, they were just bad teachers.
And teachers do have I think we could agree, a big impact on...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've always despised maths because we had a teacher called Mr. McLaughlin who was more interested in thinking he was the Fonz, right, and being a cool dude than actually teaching people.
And was he a cool dude?
No, he wasn't. He was a complete buffoon. But he fancied himself as a really cool guy, and he wasn't. So I hated the maths lessons because he'd always be there kind of messing around and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, so school wasn't for me.
Yeah. So what did you do when you left school?
What did I do when I left school? Okay, so
you were 18 at this point?
Yeah, 18. So things got complicated because I made a baby with my then girlfriend and then soon-to-be wife.
Yep.
Which got kind of complicated. But I always wanted to do something with my hands. I was a practical guy. So I went to learn how to be a plumber, kind of a maintenance stuff. So plumbing.
And who made that decision?
Stuff.
Like, how did you? I'm interested in how. Did you leave school not really knowing much apart from whether you wanted to work with your hands?
Yeah, I just knew I hated studying. I hated academic stuff, but enjoyed doing stuff with my hands. I played guitar for a bunch of years, and that's the only thing actually really I've probably ever been any good at that I've had any kind of genuine aptitude for.
Well, that's not quite true, John, but we'll get on to that.
I just knew I was a practical guy. I knew I was.
But how did you go from the idea, or quite vague idea, of wanting to work with your hands into doing the plumbing?
It was a bunch of stuff really. But as much as anything, it was because there was courses available in doing that sort of stuff, and it was a way to kind of move on and up into doing things. And I ended up doing a job in the city centre of Liverpool at the Gladstone Hotel. It's now called the Liner. It's still there, the Liner Hotel right next to the High Street Station. And I worked there for 4 years as the maintenance guy fixing stuff, and I loved it. It was the best job I've ever had.
Serious?
I had a great time. I had a great bunch of people I worked with, walking around my toolbox. We had a list of jobs that we needed doing throughout the day, fixing different stuff in different rooms.
And at that point, you're obviously supporting a child?
Yeah. So I had another job as well. So for about a year of that, and not long after Naomi had come along, my daughter, I went to, I had a next door neighbour got me a job at the Liverpool airport. So I was doing the baggage handling, so I was up about 3:15 in the morning, working from 4 till 9, and then I finished there, go to the job at the city centre, work from 10 till 3. And I managed about a year of that before I was like flaking out.
Yeah.
But
and of course you were young then.
Yeah, I was.
Well, you're young now, mate, but 19 and 20. You were very young then.
Yeah.
With a load of vitality and whatever.
Yeah. And that was it. I was fit as a fiddle. I was a healthy lad walking around a hotel, like a kind of a six floor, 6-story hotel with 154 bedrooms in it. Can't my toolbox. I had a great time. Learned loads of stuff.
And presumably, because you had a child and you had family responsibilities, I mean, you weren't much of a one for going out or living that
not
kind of life.
particularly. I played a lot of football, so I had a bunch of really good mates. Spent a lot of time with. I played, trained twice a week. I played for 2 or 3 teams on a weekend, depending if I was going to watch the football. So back then, not so much now, but kind of back then I spent a lot of time following Everton.
How did you learn to be a father?
That's a tough question.
Well,
the hard
yeah.
way, like everyone learns, I think, the hard way. There's no handbook for it, is there? So you just have to kind of.
I mean, do
wing it, really.
you think you kind of based it on your own upbringing or your own parents a little bit, or
maybe, perhaps. My parents were great. I had a pretty idyllic childhood, really. Mum and dad are still together to this day. They were, didn't really want for anything. I winged it. But I knew what was right and I knew what was wrong and I knew the right things to do. I think that's one of the reasons that I never really got into some of the dodgy stuff that some of my mates were doing, drugs and that kind of thing. I never really touched that, and I never got into it despite having friends that were into it. It just never really appealed to me, and I think as much as anything it was because maybe I was trying to set a right example and think, is that how I want Naomi to grow up? And the answer was no, so I kind of swerved that stuff, but
But you, I mean, I obviously I know you reasonably well, but do you think you would have been attracted to that anyway?
Probably not. But I guess back then I did tend to go along with the crowd in a lot of ways, like you do when you're a kid. You know what I mean? You want to fit in, you want to get on with everybody.
But you're not a guy. It seems to me who gets his kicks that way.
Yeah, and I think that was partly to do with the upbringing. So I came from a real Christian family. My mum and dad devout Christians. I was taken to church. Right into my kind of teens and stuff like that. And it wasn't all bad because he had some good mates there and stuff. But for me, when I kind of scratched the surface and had a real look into it, when it got to be an adult, I was like, nah, it's not really for me. This.
But what was it like when growing up in that environment when they found out that you were going to be a father?
That was arguably one of the most challenging times of my life because I saw what it did to my parents because they were devout Christians. We did go to the church. I remember telling my mum and dad, he actually fell off his chair, like physically fell off his chair, and my mum sat there in stony silence, and it was weird. I still don't remember what was said after the point that I revealed to them that Caroline, my girlfriend, was pregnant.
Because obviously you weren't married, were you? I mean, was that the main thing, or was it the age that you were?
Well, it was the fact. Yeah, it was the sex before marriage sort of thing that was frowned upon.
Okay.
So it put me, particularly my father, put him under a lot of pressure, and he was not a happy camper for a long time, as you can imagine. Coming from that kind of environment and background.
But I mean, weren't you brought to the front of the church or something?
Yeah, that's true. I've told you the story, haven't I? Yeah,
you mentioned it once, and it fascinated me then.
Yeah,
because I immediately thought, obviously knowing you as a friend, what impact that must have had on you.
Yeah, it was pretty harrowing. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? The people at the church were actually lovely about it.
But what happened? Did they actually bring you to the front of the church?
But it was all talked about. So when you listen to the kind of the little soundbite of it, it sounds worse than it is. But like they were being weird about it or putting us through the mill, which they weren't. They actually tried to handle it in the best way they thought possible, which was to I think it was my dad that had the conversation with one of the elders of the church, told them that we were pregnant, and then they had us round to one of the houses of the elders, and there was kind of maybe 7 or 8 guys there. Yeah. And there was, it was like a panel, and there was me and Caroline sat there.
But Caroline, presumably, she wasn't part of the church.
Yeah, she used to.
Oh, she was. Okay.
Well. Yeah, she used to come to the church as well. So
it wasn't like she was forced against your will.
No.
Although, did you ever think about just flipping him the fingers and saying, "I'm not doing it"?
Yeah, well.
But is that because you didn't want to upset your parents?
Yeah, this is it.
I'm not putting words into your mouth.
I've put him through enough here. I need to do what I can to kind of soften the boat, perhaps. But they were lovely, so they had a conversation with us, and it was a very kind of fatherly conversation. It wasn't a kind of a finger pointing sort of thing. The way they perceived it was, right, okay, this has happened, it is what it is. This is now a family matter. It's a family matter for the church. Yeah. It would be wrong of us to shun you and push you away, because that's not what I mean, some churches
it's not Christian, eh? Well, it's not a Christian thing, is it?
Absolutely right. It's not particularly Christian.
I mean, it's not a Christian thing if you happen to read the Bible.
Yeah, right.
Certainly, if you happen to read the New Testament.
Yeah. So they had this conversation, told us how they were going to handle it, and then it came to the Sunday that they were going to announce it to the congregation, and we'd not told anybody. So I'm going to guess maybe 150, 200 people in this church, and it got to the end of the service, and Mike, the chap that was the kind of the main elder guys, stood up and went, okay, this is very much a family matter, and then he just announced it to the congregation, John and Caroline. pregnant, and there was audible gasps. And my
Right.
heart was beating out my
John,
chest, man.
dude.
Oh, it was terrifying.
And how old were you? 17
I
then?
was 18.
18.
Yeah, I was 18. So that was pretty
Yikes.
harrowing. That was pretty harrowing. But afterwards, so many of the people, particularly I thought, which was weird, particularly some of the older members of the congregation came up to us and went, listen, if there's anything you need, you know, let us know and we'll do what we can to, you know, we'll do what we can to help you out. I was like, oh,
I bet you remember those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Really
but
but I'm sure not everybody was nice
No,
to you.
not everybody. There were some people who, there was some people that, more younger guys who maybe had abstained and being kind of sensible about stuff, you know, sensible in inverted commas. So yeah, it was a funny time, and it was pretty challenging for me. I mean, it was challenging for Caroline because she was pregnant and had to deal with this sort of pressure. But Caroline didn't come from a Christian family, I suppose. But still, she was sitting there in that church, and we both had to go through all of that kind of crazy stuff together, which isn't particularly healthy when I think she was 5 months when it got announced at the church.
Right.
So that's that's that story. That was
But I mean, the end result is you've got a beautiful daughter who's you know now doing really well, and
she's 24 now, all grown up,
and about to have her own child. So
she is about to have her own child.
I just want to say that you are about to be a grandfather.
I am just about to be a grandfather at 43, which is ironically is exactly the same age as my old man was when I made it in my grandma's son.
But I mean,
there's karma giving you a little.
But this is the circle of life, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's great. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for little Teddy. He's going to be called Teddy George. Bless him. So he's due next month. Yeah. End of July, man. It's crazy times.
So I mean, you had this experience. You lived through it. You survived it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're like, speaking from my own sort of experience. Whenever you think that there's something which is almost unbearable, but then you do actually bear it, and then you come out the other side. Usually, you're stronger in the way that you realise, well, actually, that I can handle that. I don't know if that's. Did you ever think of that? Or
you know, I don't remember thinking back and thinking, oh, this has made me a tougher person or anything like that. But with hindsight, I can see that it had that kind of that impact. I mean, maybe the drugs thing, for example, the circle of friends that I knocked about with, because there were some people that I stopped hanging around with at that point,
right,
and other people that I leaned towards and hung around with a lot more. So it definitely, definitely had its kind of an impact on that.
Just going back to those people who maybe weren't very nice to you at the time, and certainly, it is the idea of forgiveness and moving on and everything is part of the Christian story, for example.
Yeah.
And it was a Christian environment you were in. This is why I mention it. But did you ever forget those guys who were not very nice to you? In the same way that you probably never forgot the guys who were lovely to you.
I didn't forget them, and one of the guys that was particularly kind of snipey and sneery about it, and obviously, not directly, but they made their dissatisfaction known about the situation. One of them guys, probably about 15 years later, came to me and he apologised. I thought, that's really bad, but you do fair play. Because he came up and said, I'm really sorry, dude, I handled that situation badly. And he was a much older guy at that point, I suppose. But he...
good on for doing it.
Yeah, but you don't forget that sort of stuff, it sticks with you.
Yeah, especially people who help you out when you're in need. I mean, it's very, very hard to forget that, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we don't live alone. Mm-hmm. There's no reason you should face difficulties and problems alone. Absolutely no reason at all. Mm-hmm. And if you see other people in trouble, I think it's quite natural to want to help. If you can. I mean, I don't know if that's something which was generated out of that for you as well, knowing that you are a very helpful person.
Yeah, perhaps. I think that the people that came along and offered their help were probably sitting there thinking, "Wow, that is a challenging." Just the fact, just that moment sitting there listening to that sort of stuff, they must have. I think there were some people that would have been able immediately to kind of throw out a bit of empathy and compassion, just understanding what that must have been like for us to be sitting there in that situation, because it was pretty fraught situation.
So you're in the position. You work in 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a young child.
Yeah.
How do you make the next move that you made?
I fell into a completely different job through my best buddy, Jared. He had just started working at a company based in Warrington, IT company, and he was making all right money compared to what I was making. And my old man had no longer got a PC, and I'd learned how to touch type, and I was having a little fiddle around with the first ever computer we had and stuff like that.
So hang on, off your own bat, you learnt how to touch type?
Yeah, well, there was a typing program that came with the. It was probably the only thing that constituted any kind of game that we had.
Yeah. Yeah, but you did it, whereas
teachers
like,
typing, it was cool.
anybody, I would argue,
Yeah.
who's got access to a computer could learn to touch type.
Yeah.
But you did it.
I suppose, yeah, you could say that. I picked
Well,
it
I
up
do
and had a
say
little-
that, John.
Had a little play with it.
But
and it
what
was
I'm
good
interested
fun.
in is, I mean, you, obviously because you did it, you maybe not think anything of it, but you sat down and learned to touch type, whereas everybody can do that, but not many people do. Especially not many blokes do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's been an asset for you, has it not?
It has been an asset, and I think as much as anything, I was fed up of typing like a complete buffoon, like the one-fingered stuff, trying to work out how to do things on this PC, and it was taking me ages. And you can only work as fast as you can type if you're using a PC, right? So I was like, all right, let's have a little play with that, and I did it. And it has said well because I fell into that IT job. Then Jared got me a job at.
You fell into it, but you had the goods for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity through a mate who obviously thought that I would be okay to recommend for this job, and I interviewed for it. And
what was the job?
It was working for an IT reseller, a company that resold IT equipment, and it was working on the product database team. So it was the most boring job in the world, but with hindsight, it gave me really good grounding into IT because it was my job to type all of the information about the products that the sales guys were selling. So you're just sitting there tapping information, loading it up to the system. So then when they want to place an order for something, that part's there and they can place an order for it. But the good thing about that was that I understood. I was like, because I asked a lot of questions. Okay, well, what's this? What's a server? Oh, right, okay, that does that, right. So after a while, you get a good understanding of what does what.
And presumably your volume was pretty high because you could touch type.
Yeah. So I did okay at that job. I think that's probably why they kept me on, because I was a bit of a chatty.
And you're keen to learn.
Chatty dude. Yeah. And I was keen to learn. I wanted to stick.
Don't downplay that, John. You were keen to learn.
I'd made a bunch more cash as well. I pretty much doubled my salary at the time, which was kind of important because it was 21, 22 at that point. So that was a bit of a level up.
And so how did you make the next move?
Just through being a chatty dude, right? I think a lot of the opportunity I've had in life, particularly in that industry, it's a very much a kind of favour-driven industry, IT. I mean, it might be that everywhere, but my experience for 20 years was in IT, and I got on well with most people. Really, didn't really have any enemies throughout.
This is a talent. When we do the work with schools, for example, we tend to think of talents in very kind of obvious categories.
Yeah.
But not many people talk about the talent, which is being an affable person.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
That is a hell of a talent.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like in any industry, that's useful. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to put your finger on sometimes, but are you an affable guy? In some ways, I think it comes down to, well, having worked in sales, we've both had, are you interested in the other person?
Yeah.
Because it kind of struck me that the most charming people I've ever met, that you leave and you go, God, that person's charming. They have that quality where they almost make you feel like you're important. Or they make you feel like you're the only person in the room, men or women, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you go, God, that's a charming person. And then you think about what they did, and it mainly seems to revolve around them asking questions about you.
Exactly, and I think you're right. I think that's exactly why I did okay, because I am interested in people. I like hearing what people have done in the stories and that sort of thing. It's not I'm not kind of faking it. I'm genuinely interested in chatting to people and learning about their kind of lives.
So what was the new job you got?
So I moved from that role in that company. I think I was there for maybe 4 years, 5 years, or something like that. And I moved from that role into a procurement role, which was a bit of a step up. So we had a contract for the Department for Work and Pensions. And then from the guy that I worked alongside, was the sales guy there, he took me to another company that was at for another 7 years. That was another step up.
So did he move across to that company?
Yeah, so he moved.
And he took you with him?
Yeah, he moved to another company, got in touch with me, took me over, which was awesome, because that was another level up in terms of salary. And within this period, it got to a point where I could buy my first house. So it was 24 when I bought that house for me and Caroline and Naomi, which was awesome. Houses were a lot cheaper back then, by the way.
Well, yeah,
but still, it was. But that was a big deal. And then that was at that place for 7 years. And then the next job I got was...
What age are you at this point?
Let me think. I was about maybe knocking up to 27.
Okay, still young.
Like that, 27, 28. And then the next move that I made is the one that pretty much set me up and got me onto the kind of, from this to that sort of thing in terms of financial terms. And that came about because I'd been promised some pay rise by a boss. given the pay rise. Somebody else came in and said, "Oh, you're not having that pay rise anymore." I was like, "Right, well, I'm going to leave then." And I've been there for 7 years. I'm going to shift. And you know, okay, yeah, whatever. But I did. I've kind of put an application elsewhere. I went to do something completely different, which was working on tenders and that kind of thing, frameworks, partner management, relationship management, really.
And so you got that what by just seeing it advertised and then putting in your CV?
Yeah. Saw the job advertised, got in touch with them. Actually, no, it came through a recruitment guy. Got in touch with me, had a chat about it, and that again was like pretty.
So you were headhunted?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. Yeah,
Well,
it was. Yeah,
sounds like what it is.
Was out there. He was like, "This looks like it's for you."
Okay.
3 grueling interviews for this one for this job, but nailed it. And then spent the last 10 years until 2016. This was the last 10 years, kind of moving around another few companies. But then that role that I did,
yeah,
it was a bit of a dark art in the IT industry. So because it was a bit of a dark art, it's quite niche. It commanded quite a decent.
So other people didn't necessarily know about it or want to do it, or
yeah, exactly.
And if they don't know about it, or they're less inclined to want to find out about it if you can do it. Mm-hmm. Is that the kind of?
Yeah. It was something. It was quite a lucrative way of attracting particularly public sector business to companies. And after I'd done that for several years with a good mate of mine, Mark, he and I basically moved to around for 10 years and then settled at one place and stayed there for a good while. And
and at this point you're making pretty big money, right?
But yeah, well, it depends. Big money's different to different people, innit? But it was big money for me. Having come from absolutely nothing at school, no A-levels, sketchy GCSEs.
Let's put it this way: compared to the average salary in this country,
which is what, 26 grand,
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were making good money, right?
Yeah.
Let's not undersell this, John. Right?
Okay, I was making quite good money.
You were rocking around in a big fat Merc.
I was rocking around in like a nice Merc. Yeah, I was doing all right. I had all of the trappings of success, I suppose you could say.
You were taking loads of holidays a year whenever you could, and something that you continue to do. You
know what? That was.
Because basically what I'm trying to say is you have more time off than Clint Eastwood's safety catch. That's what I'm trying to say, John.
Yeah, maybe. Well,
he's always away. Where's John? Oh, he's got South of France. Oh, for goodness sake.
That was different last year. Because I had a year off, didn't I? But my one of my biggest gripes of working in that kind of industry in generally is that you don't get a lot of time off. Like that company I used to work for, although it was a really good company to work for, and they looked after the staff and employee satisfaction was really good. You were still getting like 25 holidays a year.
Yeah.
And you could buy.
Yeah, there's probably Americans listening to this thinking that's a lot.
Are you kidding? Yeah, right. But I still don't think it's enough. You know what I mean?
No.
That's ultimately probably what drove me, or one of the contributing factors to me deciding just to knock it all on the head.
So we get to that point now, and this is kind of, I suppose, what we're talking about today is that you were making very good money. Mm-hmm. You'd risen to a position by the sweat off your back sort of thing. Mm-hmm. You got there. I mean, it's hard. I know it's hard for you to think about it in those terms because you're just like, it happened. Yeah. But looking at it from the outside, and then you decided to give it all up. Yeah. Why did you decide to give it all up?
I think it was a few things. I'd always had the plan at some point to knock it on the head and have some me time. Maybe because, well, I think part of it was because I did have them responsibilities from being so young, and although I have no regrets at all about the way things panned out for me.
Of course.
It was challenging, but it was awesome, and I wouldn't change it for the world. A lot of my mates at the time were kind of doing all of the cool stuff you do when you're kind of in your early 20s, travelling and doing all that sort of stuff, doing what they want, going out all the time. And I didn't really have them options because I was at home kind of doing nappies and doing a feed and bits and pieces like that, I suppose. So I'd always thought one day it'll be my time, one day I'm going to kind of have this time for me again. And so that's one of the things, but also doing that job the last 10 years doing that job, they could be quite stressful because, the more successful you become and the more responsibility you have, it takes its toll. And the money that I was earning, although it was great money, the kind of gratification I got from the money and the stuff and having the big fat Merc and all that sort of stuff, it was disproportionate to the amount of happiness it actually brought me. I didn't feel particularly fulfilled.
Okay.
So spent a bit of time, sorting my finances out, put a bunch of cash away, resigned, much to the surprise of my partner in crime, Mark, at the time. He was surprised I was knocking on the head. He's still there doing his day, doing really well, but it just wasn't for me. Decided to knock it on the head and take pretty much a whole year out. Whole of 2017 was just downtime, doing lots of holidays, which was always going to be the plan, which is exactly what I wanted.
Still
to
doing
do.
lots of holidays, John.
Yeah, bit of decompression, decompressing, kind of having a bit of a chill, and no regrets, man. I do not regret leaving that place at all. It was a cool company to work for. I wouldn't go back for all the money in the world.
Yeah.
Not a chance for me.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that for some people, what I'm going to try and say here really is that it isn't necessarily the same for each individual.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure you know that there are certain individuals who work in the corporate world and they are fulfilled.
Yeah.
There are other people who work in the corporate world because they don't know really what else to do, and there are some people who are there who don't enjoy it but stay because of there's a payoff for them, whether it's the money or something.
The golden handcuffs, they call it. Yeah, the golden handcuffs.
The interesting thing for me is there are some good things about working in corporations, as I experienced it, even though I only did that sort of thing for 2 years in the pharmaceutical industry. There's a regular amount of money that you can rely on, as opposed to being self-employed, for example, which obviously I've done for 5-6 years, whatever it is. There's a security that's involved in it.
Yeah, great.
And there's undoubtedly some people, I mean, it's hard for me to get my head around it because I hate spreadsheets, right? I can't do a spreadsheet,
Right.
panic when I see a spreadsheet. But some people do like doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why I'm surprised. It's probably surprised because it's not me, but some people do like doing that work, and they are fulfilled in the corporate world.
Yeah, and I think so, you tend to enjoy doing what you're good at. So people that are good at spreadsheets and admin, whatever you want to call it, and you can get paid good money for it, then cool, man. On happy days. I've always been really envious of people that find a job that they really enjoy.
Yeah.
That pays the good money as well. Cool, but if you find a job you really enjoy, then happy days. But I don't know. I think for me, I think I got to a point that it felt the right time to leave, because unlike some people that some people's identities are really tied into what the kind of the wealth and
The status. Huge thing, isn't it? And it's a huge thing.
I feel like I got to a point where I just felt like I guess I felt comfortable in my own skin, and I felt like I didn't have anything to prove anymore. Okay, well I can, and like maybe all of the boxes that you tend to want to tick in life, marriage, kids, car, decent job, good money, all of that sort of stuff. I kind of been there and done it, and I was like, I almost felt, not in a smug way, but felt like, I feel a bit enlightened here, guys, and you might be looking at me thinking, you loser, why are you leaving all of this money and living a life that is going to bring you potentially a lot less cash? And I was like, I'm completely fine if that's the case.
But the most valuable thing is time, right?
Exactly.
Because time is the one resource you can't make any more of.
It is exactly the reason I wanted to leave that job, because I was giving up a lot of time to get in decent money, and what was I doing with the money? Nothing particularly constructive.
Yeah.
And having, basically, I told you about my minimalism thing, right, where I put all of my possessions in one room. All of my possessions that I had, without, with the exceptions of a TV and a fridge and all your utensils or whatever, just all put it in one room just to see what I actually used of all of the junk that I accumulated with that money that was earning, and worked out that there was pretty much about 4 items that I actually touched.
Yeah.
So just sold the rest.
Well, we're not talking about here about you sell all your possession and go and live in a wood, are we?
Unless that's for you.
Unless that's for you.
Unless you try it and put all your stuff in a room and go, oh no, use all of this stuff, in which case, fair play, dude.
Yeah.
You've worked out what works for you.
We're not saying that John rejected the corporate world, rejected the normal living, and then went, because that's not you either, is it?
No,
you're not going to go and live as a simple man of the forest.
No, not at all. I mean, the things
strumming your guitar.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. Actually, maybe you should. All of the things that I ended up keeping hold of, there was one particular guitar. I had a bunch of guitars, didn't I? And I flogged them all. I kept the one that actually had a bit of sentimental value that I used most. I kept my Mac. I like my iPhone. So there's a few. Little,
it's not like you don't like luxuries, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So and I'd never kind of dumb down on that and spend a lot less money. If I need something that I feel is important, I won't buy a crap cheap version. I'll buy a decent version of it, because you generally get what you pay for. I think with a lot of stuff, particularly kind of laptops and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I mean I've got when I was making good regular income in the army, I mean I bought kind of really good quality English clothes. From Cordins and things like that. And then when I went through the patch of having no money at all, those clothes still look fantastic, and they were still good quality clothes, so you wouldn't know. Yeah. Whereas some of the more fashionable clothes, if you know what I mean, never made it.
Yeah.
So the classic English tailoring, expensive shoes, expensive clothes that I bought are lasted
Yeah,
20
right.
years.
Get what you pay for, man.
Well,
Timeless
well,
classics.
if you've got money, I say buy quality.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it'll sustain you at the times when you don't.
Yeah.
So, having left that corporate world, what is it now that you want to do?
Well, we're doing it. I'm doing
Right.
something that I feel is much more fulfilling to me. I feel like there's a purpose to what you and I are doing with Counter-Strike, and that we're kind of doing our bit, I suppose.
Yeah.
Trying to, particularly with the mental health side of things that we're doing, the courses, the training, all of that kind of stuff. And I feel much more fulfilled. I've got a lot more time on my hands.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I still get to do the things I like to do. So that money that I was earning literally was being blown on complete rubbish. I spent a lot less on Just Eat now and kebabs. One of my only vices.
less being the operative word.
Yeah. Did I say less or more?
Yeah, you said less. Yeah,
good.
less is right.
Yeah,
you spend less,
a
not
lot
as if you
less.
spend no.
Oh, yeah. I still have the odd kebab.
And with the if you like, the uncertainty of being self-employed, but there is a kind of the counterpoint to that is there's a freedom with it as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you have a freedom, and that freedom brings with it the uncertainty. But obviously, maybe for you, that freedom is worth the uncertainty that comes with it.
Yeah, but I'm kind of good with uncertainty, because one of the things that the key thing I've taken from doing all of that work in corporate world is that if you do it for an amount of time, even if it's just a couple of years really, and you stick it out, for the most part you learn how to communicate. And that's we were talking about this before. I think being a good communicator and affability we were talking about. If you are a good communicator, you'll get by in life. You'll never struggle.
Yeah.
And I felt like one of the kind of comforts I took away from walking away from that money and that job and all that kind of stuff was that it's always there if you want it. I've got a CV there now that would mean that I could pretty much walk back into doing that if I wanted, I suppose. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But I never want to. But the fact that is maybe there, and the fact that the main thing I took away from that job is the ability to communicate and get on with people and that sort of stuff. That serves you well, and I think that is a real critical thing to remember in life. It's a real talent, like you said.
Isn't it funny that you don't teach it at schools really? Now I know that I have a kind of a personal interest in that. I'd like to see mixed martial arts brought into school. Right. Why? Because it is a way that you can train dynamic problem solving under pressure, and learn that skill of problem solving, because getting a job is a problem. Yeah. Trying to work out what you're going to do as a job is a problem, and an ongoing problem that you have to solve is in what do you really want to do to be fulfilled. You don't necessarily have to do that right off the bat out of school, and especially now with kids at school, they'll probably do something like 5 jobs in their life or whatever it is on average, so it's not necessarily the beginning. One of your skills was touch typing. Computers are everywhere now. Why aren't they teaching touch typing at school?
Yeah, true that.
Rather than necessarily an academic subject, which you could argue, as I do, aren't really that useful. Yeah. Apart from if you want to be an academic. Yeah. Academic intelligence is one thing, but it is essentially a static problem-solving task. Yeah. In other words, the problem that you're given doesn't change as you're trying to solve it. Whereas these great problems of life, and whether it's engineering, whether it's medicine, the problem changes as you're trying to solve it. Mixed martial arts is one example of learning that while you're young and vigorous with your body. But also things like customer service. Yeah, right. Why isn't that taught more at school? Because that seems to be a very important skill. And this talent that we're talking about of being affable, you can be naturally affable, but everybody can learn to be good with people. Absolutely. To an extent. Yeah. They can at least learn to be better. Yeah.
I saw people in my industry that came in and I thought, oh, you're gonna have a murder, mate, because you've not got the. But prove me wrong. They learn the do's and don'ts, I suppose, of being able to communicate effectively and kind of manage.
You can learn good habits, can't you?
Yeah, this is it. There's kind of certain principles for sure that you can pick up and apply with a bit of effort. Yeah, definitely. But I don't think that can be understated, the ability to communicate. And I think generally, if you are able to communicate and get on with people, and I don't have any regrets about what I do, but I think there's a lot of people that I'd love to do maybe what I did, and that God, I'd love to knock it on the head for a couple of years and try something different, but people don't because of there's the fear factor, it's fear of the unknown. Yeah. But I genuinely believe if you're a good communicator, you can get on with people. you'll never struggle. You can go away, and what's the worst that can happen? You know,
Well,
so
that's
what,
it, isn't it?
You'll come back. You're going to be living on the streets? Probably not. You've probably got friends and family that can help you if you need to. So you just do it, man.
Yeah.
Have a good time. Try it. If it don't work out, it don't work out. But at least you know.
Yeah. One of the things that we're going to get into with the schools thing again is something that I find really helpful, is to outline for the school kids wondering what they're going to do for a job, because it is difficult, because it seems that there's an enormous world out there full of different jobs you can do, and you don't know that much about any of them, because our general school system, with varying levels of sort of like quality on this, doesn't really expose people to a great deal of actual jobs, with varying levels of ability in that. But I think we can sum up how you choose a job at the beginning based on what you enjoy doing. That's one little clue for you.
Yeah.
What you're good at,
Yeah.
second clue. And then what you can get paid for.
Yeah.
And those three elements, what you enjoy, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, really that should be your guide to how to solve that problem. Understanding that what you do initially may not be what you do, and what you end up doing, like yourself or myself. But to give you a good start, so that you can actually have success in whatever it is that you're doing, and then give you the option of leaving or give you the option of doing something different, is pick that. And then when I talk to the schools about it again, it's very necessary to drill down with the school kids into, if they say they're good at something, what actually is the element they're good at. If they enjoy something, what actually is the element in it that they enjoy. So a lot of kids will say, well, I enjoy playing computer games. Okay. So you could take that at face value and say, right, well, you're going to work in the computer games industry. But actually, it may not be that aspect of it that they go into that they enjoy. So what is it you enjoy? Do you enjoy winning? Do you enjoy teamwork? Do you enjoy the creative world of the game? Because there'll be a number of different reasons that you enjoy it. And then if you're good at doing something, what actual aspect of it makes you good at doing it?
Yeah, right.
What underlines that is that you have to go through a challenging time in whatever it is to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are. Because if you're never challenged, you won't find out what you really enjoy and what really are your strengths and weaknesses. Which is one of the great things I think about, for instance, the army that I was in for 9 years, is that under those challenging circumstances, you do find out what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that is absolutely gold to know what they are. It's okay to have weaknesses. It's okay, to have strengths, but if you can find out how you're orientated and what you genuinely are good at, not good at in a tiny little pond, but genuinely good at, you have to be the best. We have to chasing being world champion and everything, but to have a job which you feel fulfilled in, then perhaps if you're abiding by those three things, then you probably won't make a misstep.
100%.
Or not too bad.
And I think also there shouldn't be so much pressure put on kids at that point, because it does feel a lot of pressure. I've got to decide what I've got to do for the rest of my life. Oh my God, that's a big decision to put on like a 15, 16-year-old, right? And you've got maybe an inkling, like you say, you can work out what you're good at and what you're not. But I think it's important to let them know, like, don't feel any pressure on it. If you want to pick something, you want to try it, cool. But if it don't work out, don't matter. Just do something different.
Exactly.
You've always got the opportunity to change your mind.
Of course you have. So
it takes that pressure off.
You only have to make, I think, a break into the jobs market. You don't have to find the final, and best solution instantly. You just have to find a workable one at the beginning. And from that, like you think you really well illustrated with your own life, is from being in work, you will find other work and the path will become clearer. So you're only looking to start the journey. You're not looking to have the whole thing mapped out, because within that journey at the moment, most of it's opaque. You can't see what's 10 years in the future. When you're a 15-year-old, what's going to happen when I'm 25? But you don't need to either. You only need to have a solid ground. Do something that's challenging and you'll actually develop you. And then perhaps as we're all making our way, navigating through life. You don't have to have it all mapped out, because even if you have it mapped out, what are the chances of it going to plan?
Absolutely right. Yeah. Don't I know it?
I think you've illustrated that well. But that's the value in it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's absolutely the value in it.
Yeah. People shouldn't put that kind of pressure on themselves to kind of decide what they got to do forever, because I think a lot of the opportunities that come up are just through people that you know as well. You meet it's the people along the way that kind of.
And you can't
shape
predict
you
that, can you? Like
No,
you can't
this is it.
say, I'll do this job and I'll meet this person which will put me on. And at the point, it feels like luck,
Yeah.
but it isn't really. I mean, there's a lucky element to it, but you've put yourself in that position.
Yeah.
I mean, the business partner of my father, we include this, I know, in our talks, talked about the fact that luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're in that place and you're prepared, you're ready to go, like you can touch type when you go into that job. Oh, funny old thing, opportunity seems to find you because you're pushing in that direction.
Yeah.
And then you do it enough times, and funny old thing, it averages out that you have those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Thanks very much, John.
You're welcome.